You've heard the dirge in 50 fucking languages now, I'm sure. Rock is dead. On Blathermouth, on Metal Cucks, all the usual soy-suffused offenders. Hell, it's even in Rolling Stone, so as long as it's not anything trivial like a gang rape accusation, it's gotta be true. Hell, you hear it so much, you have to ask yourself who exactly it benefits. Look, folks, when the fucking Darkness are writing a song about rock and roll kicking the bucket, bank on it being bullshit. Not so very long ago, the synthesizer was about the least hip instrument imaginable. It had its day in the 1980s, sure, but we were over it. And then around the mid-aughts, I heard tell of an underground movement. It didn't even have a name at that time. In fact, when asked on a Q&A episode what music I listened to apart from heavy metal, I said, well, it's not really a named genre yet. Some are calling it retro wave, some are calling it vaporwave, but some 80s synthesizer shit that sounds like a fucking action movie soundtrack, basically. And today, we of course call that synthwave. But if there was one component of the 80s nostalgia love-in that was unfairly ignored at the time, it was the most successful genre of that decade, metal. But little did they know that all the while, an organic revival had begun to foment. It started in Sweden and spread across Greater Europe, finally across to Canada, the US, and butt fucking beyond. You may even have seen some of its adherents, whether it be Sabaton or Ghost, both of whom are filling arenas on both sides of the fucking water at present. It has a name, and because it's metal, it's of course needlessly complicated. NWOTHM, the new wave of traditional heavy metal. While the Scandinavian cyclone that is NWOTHM touched down in the late 90s, I wouldn't say it was a scene until they got company. The most unique and crushingly catchy of these was an ugly-ass band, Bullitt, fusing the hard rock inclinations of AC/DC with the sheer velocity of speed metal maestros Accept, and of course a generous allotment of Judas fucking Priest. Few adherents of the nascent NWOTHM scene sound anything the fuck like Bullitt. Better still, they had a fair amount of exposure, though as with any up-and-coming genre, admittedly far less exposure than they're arguably entitled to. First underground darlings, and finally signed a Nuclear Blast where they cut a killer record, followed by a bit of a letdown, and ultimately left the label for the fucking ripoff artists at Steamhammer, but murderous material flowed the fuck throughout. Sure, they got a cheese factor of fucking pie, but with badass baller Hellhofer shrieking a metallic dirge Udo style, and twin guitars shredding their merry way in heavy-ass harmonic tandem, if you got a kick out of my Accept mythos and like more than a little AC/DC on the side, your new favorite band is Bullitt. Next. Where the flying fuck did these guys come from? An errant glance at the assholes might persuade you a tour bus time machine from 1986, but you'd be wrong, because while they have a prehistory dating back to 2010, their first recorded material didn't emerge until 2018, and with a sound whereby Wasp fucks Skid Row, sucks Motorhead while Tank fondles the fucking balls, this band is badassery squared. And as they're only just getting their first tunes together, namely the excellent inaugural EP Gates Ajar, getting in on the ground floor is a fucking must for you folks. And when I say they remind you of Wasp, I mean they remind you of motherfucking Wasp. It's familiar for a fact, but it ain't outright quotation either. The Chris Holmes guitar tone and shaggy lawless look are certainly familiar, but everything else is all Sabir. They're the lone Canadian offering on the list on account of Canada just can't seem to get the Swedish metal formula fucking right. Though having relocated to Australia, I guess that means the land down under finally has a claim to fame that doesn't involve fucking your firearms rights. It's early yet in their recorded careers, but Sabir is a band to watch. Buy their shit, and maybe a shirt, and see that they get where they're going. Next!
How do you define stoner metal? Like, I know people who smoke weed to Burzum, and that's not stoner metal at all. So, like,
yeah, that's shit black metal. But yeah, no, Burzum sucks. But then I better listen to some Mayhem, I guess, or Dark Throne.
I've noticed as metalcore and other shit-sack subgenres go the way of the media that made them, a fairly obvious formula has begun to emerge. Find fairly mediocre band, pair with pretty girl with a set of knockers that owe more to Goodyear than God, preferably of the purple-haired variety, and send them out to play shit music someone else wrote. It's even ubiquitous on traditional metal labels with an otherwise listenable lineup of bands, and I'm about half past fucking over it, my friends. Oh, and can we slather it in about 18 more coats of fake-ass feminism, folks? I need a reliable impetus to vomit on command. Not so with Lucifer, an offshoot of the excellent band The Oath, who made waves with their standout self-titled effort in 2014. You knew that shit wouldn't last when there were two broads on the fucking cover, and it didn't. Guitarist Linnea Olsen fucked off to a goth rock goat fuck by the name of Grave Pleasures, while vocalist Johanna Sidonis hooked up with the guitarist from Cathedral, I believe, and paid homage to 70s sludge with Lucifer. I admit, Lucifer took a while to grow on me, and I still don't like it as much as The Oath, but after shameless Sabbath worship on the opening single, and by worship I mean theft, found a sonic niche their own, albeit one originally carved by 70s Sabbath, and began to elevate their game incrementally. There were hints to this transition on their first record in the form of the haunting Israel and excellent opening track Abracadabra. But on Lucifer 2, they truly found their voice, all but shelving the Sabbathy strains of their first record for a more organic 70s garage metal sound that sets them apart in a scene with an awful lot of female-fronted Black Sabbath cover bands. If you're one for the first wave of heavy metal rather than the second, Spawn in the 80s, Lucifer is worthy of your worship. Next! If we've learned anything from the rise of synthwaves to its current car commercial demise, it's that any old asshole can string together a bunch of bands that sound the same and call it a zeitgeist. For a scene to stick around, they need variety. Myriad musical projects all pulling in disparate directions, occasionally brushing up against each other long enough to fill out a summer festival or 50. So while Eclipse certainly have the makings of a metal titan of the classic Maiden Cumpristian mold, it's where they diverge from the pack that gives this superb Swedish band its identity. A potent metallic melding of mid-80s Aussie riffcraft with addictive-ass AOR vocals and melodies, all with a slight neoclassical veneer in the vein of Yngwie Malmsteen's, well, Eclipse album. The band Eclipse may well be the catchiest thing you've heard in a fucking minute. With memorable tunes, an uninterrupted string of superb records, and connections with many of metal's most famous musicians, if there were any justice in the world, Eclipse would be blaring out across rock radio on a bi-hourly basis. But hey, I'd settle with a world tour supporting a major metal act or some shit. More metalheads must know the majesty of Eclipse. Next.
We started the band because there was nothing in the 90s that we liked, so we just want to, there was no other band doing this. Someone needs to do it. That's why we started. And because we were so different, and also we didn't care about how the album cover should look like. You should have the silly Photoshop thing. We had a wolf instead, drawn by Hans Arnold, this famous Swedish artist, and it really stuck out from the rest, and so did the music. So in that sense, it was very easy to get recognized because we were very alone in what we did.
I admit it seems odd to call a 19-year-old band part of the new wave of anything. If Wolf were a chick, it'd already have caught enough cum to qualify as one of Terengil's tube socks, but I'd be more than remiss to piece together any list of new wave of traditional heavy metal bands and fail to mention the band that arguably started it all. You see, before Sweden had a scene, and long before Canada cramped their style with a half-assed imitation of it, one band with a curiously classic name cranked out an underrated metal masterpiece. Most bafflingly of all, this happened deep in the heart of the detritus factory known as the 1990s. All the way back in 1999 and ultimately released in 2000, Niklas Stalvin's stalwart tribute to Iron Maiden and Motorhead washed its magnificent metalliferous ass on Swedish shores. And while it took a bit to build momentum and become an outright movement, the Paul Revere of the classic metal revival was Wolf, and you could hear it right from the beginning. It really can't be stressed enough how profoundly fucking uncool it was to play this kind of metal in the year 2000. Wolf were light years ahead of the kick-ass curve, and while they've courted praise from all strata of the rock and metal press since, I'd be lying if I said they'd achieved anywhere near the credit they deserve for effectively pioneering the NWOTHM movement in its entirety. I'm unsure where the band sit at present. It's been half a goddamn decade since Devil Seed, a solid release that lapsed occasionally into uninspired, utterly uncharacteristic of Wolf, whose discography is an audial assault of unceasingly catchy, carnivorous melodic metal of the highest possible order. After years of touring, maybe the band just needed a breather, but either way, the world wants more Wolf, and the scene itself wouldn't have a pot to piss in without him. Next. While Wolf are arguably the most important entry on the sextet today, I felt it important to send y'all home with a newer edition so you understand the greatest days for this promising scene are yet to come. And for my money, the most impressive prospects on the horizon are a, surprise, Swedish import that impressively pairs the muscular, metallic riffage of vintage Priest and Accept and the thunderous percussion of Razör with just a dash of Dokken. Indeed, in a musical sense, Ambush borders on speed metal, much like their also excellent countryman, Enforcer, who I highly recommend and regret tremendously would not fit on this fucking list, but I digress. It's in their more melodic refrains that the true character of Ambush twists into fucking form here. The heaviness of Adam and Olaf's twin guitar attack, impressive on its own, but kept consciously sparse enough to provide ample room for vocalist Oscar Jakobsson to soar. It must be said that one of NWOTHM's consistent challenges, and one particularly apparent in the Canadian variant of this scene, is the often awful vocals. Sometimes pitchy a la Unleash the Archers and Savage Master, other times merely fucking forgettable like the serviceable singing in, say, Cauldron. I don't always hate it, but there's rarely ever a wow factor. Fucking A if Ambush don't blow that bullshit clean apart. Ambush are, in short, the shit. And if the Hellbiter single is anything to go by, I can't wait for the next fucking full length. Bear in mind, they're perched atop 2 excellent albums already, which is exactly 2 more than fucking Stryker. I said it! The Rock is Dead dipshits are in for a rude awakening if they haven't had their eye on the American and Scandinavian underground, because bands like Ambush and Blade Killer are coming for your asses. It may not amount to much now, but bitch, I remember when the first Laserhawk album came out and everyone was saying, what the fuck is this? Fast forward to 2019 and 80s synth is in soap operas now. Remember what we say about betting against the Razör.
Don't do this.
Until we pass once more through the mists of the metal mythos. God fucking speed.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you guys hate modern metal? And why is that?
25,000 million trillion and go fuck yourself.